Hey everybody, new podcast out with Todd Taylor. Todd started his career at Davis, and we talked about the early days of his career at Davis, a time I missed, I must say. But then he moved into the talent acquisition function in corporate America and really worked at a various number of software companies until now in his current home, he's running TA for a global manufacturer. So we talked a lot about that career path, the difference between working in a software company versus a manufacturing environment, and also, as anyone does these days, the impact of AI on all things manufacturing and all things TA. Todd Taylor, welcome to Beers and Careers.
Oh, thank you for having me.
On this Wednesday afternoon.
It's nice to be back, and I can actually see my old office space and the window I used to inhabit from your new office, which is a mere quarter of a mile down the road.
That's right. Yeah. How many years later? Ish?
Oh, God. 22? Yeah, right around this time, 22 years ago is when I exited. It was June of 2004.
Okay.
Yep.
So, dropping a little hint here, but Todd used to work at Davis.
Yeah, long time ago.
Back in the day. And we're going to get into it.
Yeah.
We're going to get into it. Hold on. One real quick. Introduce yourself, though.
I'm Todd Taylor.
Yes.
I'm the global head of talent acquisition at MKS Inc., which is a big manufacturer of semi-component parts, services, chemicals, photonics, you name it. We have a hand in manufacturing most of what goes on to any electronic device or automotive device that you might have in your pocket.
Yes. Chips, yep. Chips.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into your background, some rapid-fire questions. We are not drinking beer because it's a Wednesday at 1:30, but what is your favorite cocktail or drink? It is Beers and Careers.
It's really evolved. I'm much more of a beer guy in my later years.
Okay.
I'm pretty middle-aged, but I used to be a very big and very specific about it, vodka tonic guy. It was always top shelf. It had to be Goose, and as I've aged, Kettle One. But yeah, that was mine. Or I really like a nice mojito in the summer.
Ah, all right.
Poolside.
All right,
a nice
like
mojito.
that. I like that.
Fresh mint.
Do you have a favorite curse word?
Oh, I do. Am I allowed to say that?
You can say whatever you want here.
I mean, I grew up the son of a trucker. I think the F word was very much a part of my vocabulary early on. My mother was like, "Where did you learn that?" I was like, "Oh my God, Dad says that." I grew up in. If you've ever seen A Christmas Story and the saltier version of your father, like that was my dad. So like watching A Christmas Story was not like watching a movie. It was like reality television, and it was really funny because it's like, we know about knocking the lug nuts into the street lights in the middle of the night and having your dad tear you a new. I was like, "Yep, I've lived that."
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think the F word is sprinkled very, very voraciously throughout our household.
Yes.
Still, my son goes, "Yeah, we don't say those words, Dad." And I go, "Yeah, good.
Yeah,
that's exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah, with my kids, I'm always like, you can hear it, but you can't say it until you're 18.
Exactly.
Then you can run your own
path. Do whatever
path.
you want.
Yeah. Are you into quotes? Favorite quote?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sometimes I ask this question, people are like, no, I am.
I do like quotes. My wife will tell you ad nauseum. My man cave is sprinkled with, inspirational kind of quips from a variety of different things. Everything from comic book movies to, fairly deep, I am the storm moments. The warrior gets approached by the page, and one of my favorite ones was actually Bruce Lee, which is "Be water, my friend," which is like basically means learn how to adapt.
Yes.
He had given an example of if you have a glass, the water will take the shape of the glass. You have a tea kettle, the water will take the shape of a tea kettle. It's like wherever you are, you have to learn to be water, right? Be fluid, be smooth, fit the environment that you're in, but know that you are fluid, so you can move and you can change.
Right.
Which is something that it's so easy and so crisp, but I love that one.
And incredibly important.
Yeah.
Incredibly
I agree.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, it's so funny. I read a lot of YA lit now because I have little kids.
Yeah.
It was funny. I'd always seen the Harry Potter movies before I ever read the books, and my son turned 5, and I started reading the Harry Potter books. I really love those. J.K. Rowling's personal, affinities aside. I always like Stephen King books growing up. So it was a big. I don't know if I would even call them horror because I did like the
thrillers, right? More so.
You know, it was funny. He had horror books
Yeah.
like Cujo and It. Like those are
Yeah.
definitely horror books. Misery was one of the first books I really picked up and loved. But I liked a lot of his short story books,
Okay.
like Skeleton Crew, which is where like Stand by Me comes from.
Oh, okay.
Or some of the other movies, like Shawshank Redemption, is actually a short story, right? It's called.
I did not know that.
What's it called? No, it's not Marlene Dietrich in Shawshank Redemption. It's another famous
I didn't know
pinup model from like the 50s.
Okay.
Rita Hayworth. It's called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, right? And that was the poster that he uses at the end to cover the hole.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite stories. But yeah, those are short stories. In
Okay.
Some of those.
Oh, I gotta check those out.
They're really,
that.
they're really,
Yeah.
really cool. They're
Okay.
really cool. So yeah, I would say King was right up there. And my mom was an English teacher, so it was funny because the more she pushed, the less I wanted to read. My brother has always been a very voracious reader, and he likes boring stuff like biographies and autobiography. I'm like, oh, he'll read about presidents in World War II and the Civil War till the end of time and be completely entertained by it. I was like, you couldn't get me. Michael Crichton was someone that I read everything of in my teen years that I loved. Everything, you get introduced to it through Jurassic Park. I actually think that's one of his mid-tier books. He had some really amazing books that got turned into probably some pretty crappy movies. Congo, Sphere, amazing books. Like, can't put them down kind of books. The movies are terrible, but the books were great.
I have to go back now because I didn't read a lot of those.
Those are, I mean, a lot of them are very prophetic too,
Yeah.
because he predicted a lot of stuff about gene splicing, cloning. That he was 25 years ahead, 40 years ahead in some cases.
To say at least,
It's the Will Smith movie where he fights this I Am Legend.
I Am
Is
Legend.
basically based on a Michael Crichton book called The Omega Man.
Okay.
So like, there's a lot of popular movies that were books for 30 years before they ever became movies.
And now you're just
they're
reading
just like, yeah, they're really
and now
cool.
you've put those down. You're just reading your
I
kids.
go through. I mean, I have little kids now, so I have no time to read or
Same.
energy.
I know.
But like, if I'm on vacation, like I enjoy a good book.
Yeah.
You know, I got into the Da Vinci Code books. Michael Brown. Like, I actually think the Da Vinci Code. It's not the strongest book. He's got one called Digital Fortress that I could not put down.
Okay.
And it was very ahead of its time relative to cybersecurity and some of the stuff that it talks about, but couldn't put it down.
I love this. Now I know to add Todd Kaylor.
There you
Ask
go.
Todd Kaylor before I go on vacation.
I would not
what
even
to
know.
read.
I actually on vacation I like to read jokier books.
Okay.
I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell was one of my favorites, and there's a sequel to that that I liked a lot.
Was that Tucker?
Yeah, Tucker Carlson.
Or Tucker Max. Or
Tucker
something.
Max.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson. Might as well be the same guy. And who knows? Maybe it is. We've never seen him in the same room. But yeah, Tucker Carlson probably fabricated 50% of it. But I mean, even if he did, the other half is still, I mean,
Fantastic.
laugh out loud funny.
Laugh out loud funny.
And it's very misogynistic. And if you can put it aside and say, this is fiction, it's just a gag.
Just a locker room joke.
It's funny. I mean,
is
to
funny.
read on your
It is.
to read on a beach is just like, it's good for a laugh.
Do you like the historical fiction, Ken Follett's, and that kind of stuff? Or no?
Yeah, some of it. I mean, I'm not a big enough reader to say that. You know, I'll glom on to something
is
that's
pretty
good.
good.
You got to read. I mean, I
just
guess I'm
rattle
drawing
off.
from.
You just rattled off. a lot
from like
there.
20 years of stuff. I mean, now I'll read more like, I'm a big. We'll probably touch on this, but I'm a big New York sports fan. So the Mets, the Knicks, the Giants.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's actually hard. It's a hard cross to bear relative to championships outside of the Giants.
Yeah, especially where you live.
Yeah, it's hard too. I was fun at Super Bowl parties for like a 5-year stretch
Yes.
where the Giants kept beating the Patriots. But I like to read a lot of stories about the heyday teams, the '86 Mets, the Knicks from the '60s. Those are fun books to read. But yeah, I don't read a ton. I don't have the energy. Maybe one day I'll pick it back up. But
I totally get it. I got one more for you. What was your first job? Doesn't have to be W-2.
grocery store.
Okay.
Stock boy in a grocery store right at the bottom of my street. So it was easy. I could walk there in 5 minutes.
How
I
old?
remember 15.
Okay.
Before my junior year in high school, and I loved it. I worked with a bunch of my friends. You had to learn how to use the little clicker with the stickers. It was a gas.
Yes.
We had a place where you could hide in the storeroom, where it was like built up. Later movies have made like a joke out of that. I don't know if you've ever seen like the Dak Shepard movie where it takes place in Costco. I think it's Employee of the Month.
Oh, yes,
And they have
yes.
this big hiding space, but it's literally like 4 stories up, and they have to use a cherry picker to get up there. I mean, we had that, but it was at ground level. It was just like you sat in a cube of cereal boxes, and that's where people like took secret breaks.
That's unbelievable.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So you where did you go to college again? Remind me.
Fairfield University.
Fairfield.
Fear the deer.
FU.
FU. Actually, the #1 place to get job placement following a college education in Connecticut.
Really?
And LinkedIn actually ranked it in its top 50 schools in America. So it was It was funny because I used to. I got my start in recruiting, and I don't know if you'll probably get to this at some point, but. My first real job on kind of selling anyone on anything or recruiting was in college. And I remember I used to position it as a baby ivy. It's like, this is an ivy that no one's talking about yet. And I go, I got news for you. In 20 years, Fairfield will come up in the conversation when people are going, well, I can't go to Princeton or Harvard or whatever. It's like, where am I going to go? It's like, Fairfield's probably going to be your next tier of colleges that you're going to look at.
I've never talked to a person that's gone to Fairfield and didn't like it.
I was actually... It's so different now. It's probably 3 times the size it was. The student body was about 2,500 when I went there.
Oh.
And most of the buildings that are on campus now weren't there when I attended.
Okay.
So they've
it's very different.
subsequently made it an incredibly nice school. Like, I loved it and I had a great time, and I wouldn't second guess the choice to go there. The difference between going there in the 90s versus going there now couldn't be more foreign.
Yeah, apple and orange.
I mean, but what I hear from kids of friends of mine who go there as kind of legacies, they're like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, it's such a cool place, and now they have top 20, women's and men's soccer teams.
Yeah, they're good sports.
The women's basketball team is a perennial top 25. I mean, they get some renown for some of their sports programs, which they didn't when I was there. I mean, our biggest claim to fame was we won the MAC tournament when I was a sophomore. We went in as a 16 seed. We played UNC, and we're beating them at halftime in the tournament. And we're like, oh my God, it's going to happen. And eventually, the other team having a 7'4" center
just wears you
is
down.
going to just drag. And we lost by like 15. But it's like, oh my God, for a half, we thought we were going to be the first 16 to ever beat a 1.
Wow.
But,
Glory days.
1996. That was a long time ago. Doesn't feel like it, but it really is when we look in the Wayback Machine.
So, you've obviously had a couple stops along your career. Give me the Reader's Digest version of I graduate college to MKS.
Yeah, and it's gonna seem kind of weird because the beginning was weird. The beginning, I graduated from college in 1999, which is when the .com bubble was happening, right? And that's all anyone was talking about was the internet. So I'm one of those last groups of people who entered early adulthood without the internet really being a thing, it was something you could get as optional in your dorm room.
Right.
So you could get bandwidth. You had to pay more for it. I was like, I never had it before. What difference does it make? And I remember
Napster wasn't out
that
yet.
not yet. That came out within 2 years of me graduating. So I ended up on this hyper information curve that I loved. My first job was actually for Progressive Insurance as a claims appraiser.
Okay.
So I ended up getting, going to Fairfield was good, but I had a liberal arts degree. So most people who get recruited out of Fairfield are finance majors, accounting majors, business majors. I was a psych major with a Spanish minor. My father's like, good luck with that. He's like, the good thing that you have is you can talk, right? And you can present. So he, encouraged me to just get out there, find something. He's like, it's not going to be the only job you ever have. I was able to land a job, working in Fairfield County on cars that were damaged. I got to appraise Lamborghinis. I got to appraise Bentleys. I got to appraise and I'm a car aficionado. So like every car I would have dreamed of being able to touch and be near, I got to see.
Very cool.
In that first year out of college. And then, following that, I got introduced to a network engineering firm where they were looking for what eventually became the term sourcing specialist. It was more like a researcher than on candidate data, and I just took to it like a duck to water. It was a lot of fun, and that's where I really kind of generated the love for recruiting.
And then from there?
From there, that was New York, so it was very happening, very expensive. I used to commute from between our White Plains office and Stamford, where I lived, also used to go into our Manhattan office pretty routinely, especially after we had a managerial switch. And that guy was like, get into the New York office. So that was pretty cool when you're 24.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you're putting on your shiny shoes, your slacks. You're like, I don't make anything, but I look like I make something,
like $1 million
right?
bucks.
Exactly. And
the energy of the city.
Oh my God,
I mean,
it
right?
was
It's just like,
it was cool. It's funny now that people complain about inflation because it's like, no, I remember what it was like to pay $12 for a sandwich in 2001.
Right.
Because I worked in New York, so ended up wanting to move from the Westchester area up to Boston because that's where all my buddies were, and actually was laid off from that same company that I fell in love with recruiting because they were starting to downsize as part of the .com. The
Right.
clients started to go bust, so they started to go bust, and they actually ended up shuttering the Andover office that they had. I ended up having to pivot. Took a job with Sapphire Technologies, which no longer exists.
No, but had a great run.
Oh my God, had the greatest guy to go work for. I'm drawing a complete blank on his name. I still hear from him, literally. I mean, we worked together for like 2 weeks. He got laid off. 9/11 happened on my 4th day at that place. I was supposed to work in their downtown Boston office. They pulled that off the table. They're like, you're going to work in Woburn. I'm like, this isn't what I agreed to. Yeah. And I had also received an offer from Davis in that time. Davis, unfortunately, was 38 miles from where I lived, right? And I was like, I'm not really looking to drive for an hour a day. But I called, can't even remember her name anymore. I blocked it out probably for good reason. But I called, Bob's management team, and I said, hey, I know you made me an offer. I turned it down. Are you still looking for someone? Because the job I was offered is not really the job that they had for me. Would you take me? And they're like, please start next week. And I was like, I was there. Awesome. And I started with Davis in October of 2001. Yeah, because it was a month after the towers went down.
Dude.
Yeah, it was a month after the tower. I mean, so much is obviously baked around certain milestones,
events.
right? And that was enormous, right? Because the market, which was already tumultuous because the .com bubble was starting to burst, I mean, it flatlined.
Right.
And I remember Davis Companies was in trouble at that time.
A ton of trouble.
They let a bunch of people go. I remember there was some significant heartburn about how did he get hired, but you're letting all these other people go. And I think I'm paraphrasing, and I may have invented part of this, but I think Bob was like said to someone who kept giving him a hard time because he's better and he's cheaper.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, that's reassuring.
It's an honest approach.
And look, the things that we did, I thought I was going to do tech recruiting when I came here because that's what I knew. I ended up speaking Spanish, 8 hours a day, putting $8 an hour laborers into Parcel Direct right down the road over in Northborough, and I had a blast. Like I actually had a gross margin that was head and shoulders above anyone else in the company because I had a skill set that no one knew I had.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I can go give tours and I can recruit people. And I learned how to identify a bad social security card and fake licenses. And it was a trip. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing that. And especially because, people thought I was the ultimate gringo. Like no one thought that I could speak. Looking at me, I had a head full of tously strawberry blonde hair. I mean, I looked like a boy band member that they wouldn't take like the 6th man out because it's like, dude, you're not photogenic. Yeah. That that alabaster skin. But yeah, it was fun, and I remember helping at that time. I remember Jim Cahill, R.I.P. He passed away a couple years ago. Helping to land the contract at Benchmark Electronics.
Yes.
And I spent a lot of time with him trying to get some of the low-level assemblers and technicians that they had, and we used to go to the skeleton crew Chelmsford office and run people through, transistor tests and parts assembly tests.
Right.
And I just, I had so much fun. And I think Bob was great because Bob really empowered people to say, figure it out, be creative. Like, we need you to help solve this gross margin issue, right? To keep the Company open. And we did. I went down to Jersey and helped open.
Staples?
No, it's Tefal.
Tefal, that's right.
And I went down there for a week because I spoke Spanish, and I helped them open that first office down there. And again, I was like, wow, like what an honor to have your CEO when you're 24 go, I need you to go down there and help them open that office. Like, that was really complimentary of Bob at that time. It's like, I'll never forget. I mean, Bob was very fatherly. When I left in June of 2004, so I'd been here for about 2.5 years, my father passed away maybe 5 months later, and the entire Davis team came to my dad's funeral in Western Mass.
Wow.
And my brother goes, that's the kind of company you want to work for.
Right.
He goes, and you just left that. He's like, just so you know, you just left that to go to this other thing that you ended up hating. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I go, and to this day, I mentioned that to Bob.
Yeah.
I go, Bob, you know, like having you there, because you were like a father figure to me in the office.
Yes.
Right. And having you there to say, hey, man, like you're not at the company, but you're not part of the family anymore.
Right.
That was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Very cool. So is this when the pivot from agency to like corporate happens?
What's funny is that job, that sourcing specialist job, was a corporate job.
Yeah,
so
right.
I did the rare thing where I went from corporate to agency and then back to corporate.
Okay.
I didn't have a problem with agency. I think the hard part is that there's much less downtime in agency. Like you always kind of felt
none.
Well, right, and you always felt very tethered to your phone because like if you don't answer, that's a deal that might go out the door. Or a candidate who you can't get on, billing soon. That was the one thing I was like, I needed a little bit more, I think, structure of a kind of a 9 to 5 where I could put it away.
Yes.
I'm also so type A
Yes.
that I'm like, commission, while it was good, because I did pretty well here.
Yeah, you must have.
Even in a down time, especially at the age I was at before, the inflation of the last, 5 or 6 years. But that was almost not good for me because it was just like it's almost like that dopamine
You
fix,
can
right?
never get enough.
You can't, yeah, exactly. You
Can't
can't,
get
I wouldn't have been able to make enough.
Yeah.
And I would have chased it 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And, I pivoted back into corporate America in, 2004, 2005. And, I've kind of stuck it out ever since.
Yeah.
So,
But then, like when I look at your background, I see mainly tech.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then this pivot to manufacturing. Like talk us through.
What's interesting about that is that if you talk to John Lee, who's MKS's CEO, he will not describe us as a manufacturer. He'll describe us as a tech company, and he's not wrong. I mean, what we make is technology that ends up being used in the process of manufacturing every major electronic device that
Very true.
everyone uses.
Very
right?
true.
And even stuff like automotive, right? And I'm a big car guy. And I'm always like chroming. Chroming is so fascinating to me because I'm like, is it metal? Is it paint? What is it? Is this It's like we actually own a company that manufactures the stuff that goes on to the front
what is
grills of. What is it?
Yeah, like is it?
Chrome is like a combination of like a metal and a paint
Okay.
that comes together.
So they are spraying that on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we own a company that manufactures a lot of that stuff. What's hard is, and I didn't realize this, like Tesla started to kill that. Because if you ever think of a Tesla, there's no grill on a Tesla.
There's none.
So there's no chrome shine. And
Yeah.
that's kind of why I don't like Teslas. I like the chrome highlights on cars. And that's something that MKS does. So that's, even just a farther spin up. But we also do stuff with photonics and optics.
Yes.
Some of the most sophisticated laser systems that you're going to see used in the world. Everything from medical applications through aerospace engineering. It's really fascinating. Semi is an industry that we're involved in, but it's not the only industry we're involved in. So a lot of the stuff that we develop and we manufacture goes into so many different things. It's like I might be dating myself with this one, but there was a company called BASF in the 80s.
Yes.
And they used to have these insanely compelling commercials. And they say, we don't make the dress, we make the dress brighter. And I'm like, tell me more.
Yes.
And you get to the end, they never told you what they did.
Right.
They're a chemical company.
Right.
And it's like, but what a grabby kind of slogan, right? And it's just like, it's funny as I work with Davis as a vendor partner, right? And I work with an employee, a digital advertising company, HireClicks up in the North Shore. I kind of view MKS in that similar vein. Like, can we come up with something like BASF did in the 80s and 90s to get candidates talking about it in such a way of like, I don't know what it is, but I got to know more.
Right.
Right. And it's like, that's, for something that is very utilitarian, it's like, look, manufacturing components or pieces of stuff is not always the sexiest thing, but it's like when I can tell, because my kids will ask, I'm sure your kids ask what you do, and you go, I traffic in human souls.
Yeah.
When I hold up my phone and I go, see Daddy's phone? I go, yeah, we love Daddy's phone. We play games on it. I go, well, everything that we do on it wouldn't be possible without a company like mine, because a lot of the stuff that goes into it, we have some part in helping to manufacture, whether it's the pieces of the chips or the placement of the the containment systems that goes into them, right? Exactly. Testing it, quality control, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of cool because my kid, who's almost 7, pretty smart, to get him to understand that is like, oh wow, okay,
Right.
yeah, because I've seen the insides. We've broken open a radio and we know what's in there.
I feel like the manufacturing industry. It's funny to hear you articulate it that way because it really resonates. Like I feel like as little boys or little kids, construction sites are just cool.
Yeah.
Because you can see them and you know what's going on. And then as you're an adult, like I had the same thing when I started here. I was like manufacturing.
Yeah.
I was like I grew up in Dedham. There is no manufacturing. It's everyone's parents are
You just
lawyers.
think of it as something that's done somewhere else.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Like cars. Like you
yes.
see the car assembly line and you go,
Right.
okay, great.
Right.
I don't know where it is.
Like,
I
that
just know
doesn't-
that I have a car.
It doesn't happen here. But I feel like that same childish joy you get out of seeing a construction site, once you get behind the doors of a manufacturing facility, you're like, no freaking way.
It kind of is, especially to see some of the robotic equipment that we use. And I hear interns talking about learning how to use a CNC lathe to machine their own parts to do some kind of project that they're. I'm like, what?
It's very
I
cool.
can never find CNC operators. Period. I'm like, I got an intern in college who's learning how to use the lathe and the mill so that he can make a part for something that we're going to throw. I mean, we have interns who design things or fix processes that we end up building into production.
I bet.
And it's like, it's really cool to see. I'm like, hey man, you're 19. You just solved the company maybe $1 million in something that we hadn't looked at.
Yes.
I agree with you on that childish fixation on, ooh, it's cool to see how stuff gets made.
Yes. And it resonates with some and it doesn't resonate with others. But it's fascinating.
And
to
for
me.
me, relative to landing there, I mean, some of it is opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like I came out of a software company that had reorganized. There weren't a lot of good leadership roles in some of the companies that I was targeting. I got a call from MKS and I was like, this is interesting. And it was really close to home. I was like, oh my God, I pass you guys all the time on the way to swim lessons for my children. So it was pretty easy. And the team was incredibly ingratiating and liked the outsider's perspective. They're like, okay, you're used to real rapid growth in tech. Show us how you can replicate that here.
Yes.
Because time to fill is an issue. We lag. And I was like, okay, let's break down the process and talk about how you interview and playing offense versus defense and the ramp.
Right.
It's been fun to kind of teach a company kind of a new way of thinking about TA, which I think is far more consultative than what I would say is traditional reactive kind of rec filling. I was like, let's think about the skills that we constantly need rather than just the recs that are open. Because that way we can build pools and communities and start to talk to people and outreach proactively so that when we do have openings, we have a built-in group of followers who are ready to hear us.
Yes.
And that's a lot of fun.
What have been the things, I guess, from your tech experience, bring it over to manufacturing that you're like, man, I can't believe the manufacturing industry doesn't do this stuff?
Google's rule of 4. You know what Google's rule of 4 is?
I don't.
So Google, and this is a fun story. I encourage everyone to Google it.
Yeah.
Google is phenomenal in that it was renowned as a very difficult place to interview. And it got known for that because they used to ask people all kinds of weird stress questions that were very atypical, right? Like you're shrunken down to the size of an ant and you're thrown into a blender. Like, how do you get out, right? And it was supposed to be this test of almost like ingenuity. And what they found was that asking people abstract problems to solve in an abstract environment proved exactly 0 relative to your ability to do a job.
Right.
And that resulted in turnover, right? So it's just like, well, they also found that everyone and their grandmother wanted to meet the candidate during the process. And many teams became, known for that. Like, oh, hey, you're going to go through 8 rounds and then you're going to meet the team. And it's like, it's exhaustive, right? And you couldn't get the data that you would get ends up being more consensus driven than qualitative. Right. So it's just like, well, great. It's like, you've probably heard the expression like, oh yeah, I'd like to have a beer with that person. Yes. That also proves 0. It proves that they're fun to drink beer with, not that they can do the job.
Exactly.
Right. But what came out of all that data was once we got past the 4th interview, provided those 4 interviews were done well, and they were a certain length of time, usually between 45 and 60 minutes, there was no benefit to doing any more interviews.
Okay.
Right. And I was like, ooh, like talk about a time saver, because if you have companies that want to put you through multiple rounds, have you meet with 3 or 4 people in each round, you could be spending 12 to 15 hours evaluating someone when all you need is 4. And that was something that I introduced. We've piloted it. It hasn't always taken hold. Because I do think people get very locked into, I've been interviewing for years, so therefore I know how to interview.
I would say probably also for like, maybe not director level, but like, I would say director level and up.
Even
like
director. I mean, I think you get to
roles.
you get to VP, and I think you have to flex with a couple of more.
Yeah.
Because there's more at stake.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to make sure that people are not going into interviews and winging it. Like there's a certain amount of preparation that has to be done. And I like to scorecard things. You know, you keep them very objective, right? You keep everyone on the same page about exactly what passes the bar and what does not. What is important to the company and what isn't. You know, what's a personal preference versus an absolute need. You know, those are the things that can be distilled from a properly run interview process. Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's, you know, endemic of manufacturing. I would say it's most companies. Most companies tend to over-interview people. And there's also, you know, the lower down you go, and especially if the job is fairly repetitive, it's like you don't need tons of interviews to validate it. And it's like you've got to, I think companies that do that are actually playing defense. It's not that they don't want to hire people, it's that they don't want to make a mistake. And the problem is you're going to make a mistake anyway because they're people. Right. You know, some people just interview phenomenally well. Some people don't interview well and you pass on them. And it's like, shame on you because they're awesome. Right. Right. I think interviewing is much more science than it is art. And people need to appreciate that. And I think that most companies waste thousands of hours, hundreds of thousands of hours a year, depending on your size, interviewing when they've already probably have enough data to make a decision. Yeah. And I think that's something that I've helped bring. I'm rejiggering how we train people to interview all over the world for MKS, and it's a program I created called Interview Fundamentals, and it goes from a lot of the interview training that I've pulled together over the last 20 years, some that has worked, some that has not worked. Right. But it's really to teach people to make job descriptions as engaging as humanly possible, to make sure that your interview process is not a, hey, I'm tapping you on the shoulder, there's a guy here in 15 minutes, I need you to validate whether or not he can do what he does. It's like, no, you need more of a plan. Prep. It's the difference between playing pickup basketball in the park and playing league ball or playing in the NBA. It's like, look, anyone who's played a pickup game in the park realizes if you're not playing with your friends, you're not getting the ball. Yes. Especially if you're playing with a bunch of other people who are clearly friends. In an actual interview, you're interviewing with a team of people that you know, and you should all have your piece of evaluating what that person's good at. Then you assemble that pie at the end. You know whether it's a go or no go. That's really like what I like to infuse in any environment that I go
that
to.
makes a lot of sense. Have you read the book Who? Yeah. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, I think a lot of these philosophies have kind of blended together over the last several years. I learned a lot about structured interviewing starting in like 2014, and it really kind of got me into this isn't just like a reflex. Yes. It's not like washing your car. It's like, no, there's prep that goes into an interview. There's learning your own biases, right? There's learning about other people's biases. There's knowing or distinguishing between what is a want and what is a need. Right. And that's generally where I am with hiring teams as I consult. I go, it sounds like you really want that, but it doesn't sound like you really need that, and it's not available in the market, right? So do you want to wait 6 months, or do you want to train someone with a similar technology that will probably pick this up really quickly, or do you want to wait those 6 months for the ideal person who may not be the right fit for your company?
It's an interesting dynamic. Bob impressed that upon me by being like, when you hire someone, I want you to envision you writing a check for $40,000, $60,000 out of your account to that person.
It's different when you look at it that way.
Okay, good call.
It is different but you still want to encourage folks to take risk.
I agree.
Right? Because there's a growth mindset that comes in where you go, I also have to scale my business, right? And I can't hire everyone that's principal level expert at what they do. I have to train some of my own experts. Yes. There's a policy that Accenture came up with that's called net zero hiring, which means they don't, think of it like a pyramid, standing straight up with the apex obviously at the top, and you should hire the bulk of your hires at the junior level. Yeah. And the higher you get up, obviously the fewer of you there are, but when that level 5 person decides to leave, right, because there's not a lot of them, well, the level 4 person is ready to jump in, and everyone bumps up. So the person that left at 5 now becomes the level 1, and you backfill at the beginning so that you're constantly positioned in such a way as to handle attrition without a lot of pain.
Next in line. Who's next?
That's pretty much it.
It's next in line. Yeah, it's I've always felt in our world, our world is a very trainable skill.
Yeah.
If you can talk to people,
Absolutely.
it's a super trainable skill. So it's like, how much grit does this person have? How
Yeah.
much curiosity does this have? So I've always been like, all right, what are the things I need in the person? But then how do I reverse engineer the questions to determine their level of that grit?
Totally.
Or-
And you still have a gray area in
You
there,
do.
right? That you can't determine.
Yeah.
Some of it's based on, faith, blind luck. I
Market.
always used to correlate, like athletes. Athletes
Yeah.
make great recruiters because people who are really good athletes don't like to lose.
Right.
Right? They should be naturally competitive. Recruiting is probably one of the best things I've ever been able to use my competitive grit for, because
Yes.
I wanted to be the best. I did not want to be the middle of the tier, or certainly on the low end. I wanted to be the number one producer on my team. I wanted to be the one that got all the praise and attention. Some people will say that turned me into a massive egomaniac for about 15 years. My wife would be like, 15? It's not done. But I mean, again, that competitive tenacity does make good recruiters. It's
Yes.
not a one-for-one correlation, but I would say that it's pretty close.
Yes. Do you find that the recruiters who succeed on your team in a manufacturing environment at MKS have a different component or makeup, or you look for something different than maybe in more of the tech-focused companies
I
you've
think
been in the past?
I think anyone who does it well, and I always say there's no such thing as a good tech recruiter or
Yeah.
a good marketing recruiter. I go, look, if you're a good recruiter, you're going to
You're a good
learn it.
recruiter.
You're going to figure it out,
Yeah.
right? And it's the tenacity that you can't teach people. Like, you can refine elements of their approach. You can refine their ability to source for candidates. You can't teach them the tenacity. Either they're hungry or they're not. And I think the people that I've been fortunate enough to work with at other companies and at MKS have been hungry.
Yes.
They're curious, right? And they're people pleasing can be a good thing or a bad thing.
yeah, it's not
because you walk a fine line. Because I think a lot of what goes into talent acquisition is customer service, right?
Yes.
Like, there's a service element to what we do. It's
Yes.
probably a majority of what we do. That gets you into trouble, though, because you can't be objective and evaluative if you're too people pleasing.
Yes.
Because you won't really ever tell someone the truth, which is kind of what you need to do to be really good at recruiting. You have to say, actually, I don't think this person's a fit, and here's why.
Yes.
Especially if a leader is like, oh my God, I love this person. It's like, you love them so much, you're not seeing their faults,
Right.
Or why this might not be the right fit. I always talk about recruiting as being not good or bad, which is something I think a lot of people get sucked into. It's fit or not fit.
Right.
It's like a suit of clothes. Either it fits great, or it's too big, or it's too small. But God knows, if you're going to an important wedding or an event, you want to look good. So you want it to fit right. It's the same thing with jobs and careers. You want to make sure that the candidate is the right fit for what you're doing. And the more objectively you can evaluate that, the better off you'll be.
Yes. Now, as someone who's got a global footprint, a team around the world, I'm pretty interested in your perspective of like how you view the current state of our local market vis-a-vis how some of those other markets are doing as it pertains to manufacturing talent.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think that answer changes every 5 years.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
And there's
I
a lot
agree.
of there's a lot of politicization that happens in that, right? Like,
Agreed.
we've had presidents who are, very global economically focused, and they understand that it's a tapestry throughout the world. Like, we can't be isolationists anymore because we depend too much on other countries for certain types of goods and services. We do have some heartburn over. We wish it was the America of the 1950s,
Right.
Where you could go somewhere and work a job for 40 years and buy a house and, support a family. And that's not really it's not anyone's fault. It's just not how the world works anymore, because there's so much more communication amongst all these continents. That said, there is a balance that needs to be struck. As we are in a time of unfortunate war in the Middle East that affects, the ability, either supply chain. I mean, the pandemic has affected. That's why I say 5 years.
Yeah.
The supply chain was affected by the pandemic 5
Yeah.
years ago, right? Now it's affected by a war, an unfortunate war, but a war nonetheless. And that makes the scales tip differently. There's very anti-China rhetoric that is, propagated by our government and honestly the rest of the world's governments, because quite frankly, all governments are kind of up to some nefarious things.
Right.
But we don't want to export chips to China that will help them get ahead of us in the AI race. Like again, it's this interesting give and take between everything. Now people look for what are the other areas that I could go manufacture something on the cheap that isn't China? You know, is it Thailand? Is it Vietnam? Is it Korea? You know, and that's where people are expanding to. South America became very interesting for software companies in the last 5-10 years because, oh my God, Brazil is the 6th biggest economy in the world, and yet there aren't tons of software, companies that are down there.
Right.
I mean, it's so much of it is a current events list of what's popular in the world and what's not. And it does determine, where can you produce whatever it is you're trying to produce in business for the least amount of money that will net you the most profit. Is that a good strategy?
Right.
I don't know that it's a great long-term strategy because I think it always changes. There's a good example in the difference between the leadership at Costco and BJ's. I don't know if you've read that article.
I have not.
Costco's CEO believes in paying people insanely livable wages so that they stay, right? And the average tenure of a Costco employee is pretty extensive. I think it's north of 4 or 5 plus years. BJ's has the opposite. They treat their employees more like commodities, right?
Yep.
And they're pretty much status quo on what they have to pay people, and they're okay with the tenures being low and the churn. That's just kind of part of their business model. But what they found is that Costco actually generates a higher average return for their shareholders than BJ's does, and it kind of goes back to what the model around hiring was and the loyalty around their employees. So as long as you have companies that are trying to generate the most margin,
Yes.
people are going to struggle with that because where the jobs are going to be is going to change. India is not the panacea that it was 15 years ago.
No.
It used to be a 3-for-1 swap. If you wanted to hire a software engineer in California and it was going to be, $400,000 a year, you could hire probably 5 or 6 people for that $400,000 in India. Can't do that now. Now it's more like maybe a 1.5.
I was gonna say it's not even 2 to 1.
No, it's not two. It's not 2 to 1 anymore. No. And honestly, I like that. I mean, it's funny. I hear a lot of gripes from managers about, everyone's so opportunistic, and it's like, no, they're capitalistic.
Right.
I go, so that's what we've kind of imbued upon that, and I go, people are tired of being taken advantage of, so they're opportunistic. It's what Americans have been for 100 years.
100%.
So it's fascinating. There's not a great straight answer to the
I
Americas
get that.
versus everywhere else.
I
but
get that.
I think it's just a shift of where can you do the work the cheapest?
Right.
And that's where people are going to move to.
Right. It's funny though that when so you haven't had any plants move in your tenure, right? At MKS, have you had any?
We've opened new plants.
You've opened
we
new
just
plants.
opened a plant in Penang, Malaysia.
Okay.
This year it opened.
Was labor a criteria for the opening, or was it really just what's the lowest cost to produce?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I'm never gonna say it's squarely factored on one variable.
Right.
I mean, you could go,
Right.
great, we can get to the moon real cheap. Let's throw a place on. That's not how it works. But I think they look at
Elon's trying.
They look at availability of market talent, cost of local market talent, cost of standing up a plant, and then what are your long-term prospects. I'm actually pretty bullish on what they're going to do there. The more I've learned about that part of Asia. But again, it'll have its challenges because again, I think the market is great sometimes for certain types of talent and it won't be for others.
Right.
And that's true anywhere.
Anywhere, which is so true. You're a great guy to ask this question because just because I think you've got you more than most East Coasters have a decent beat on Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But like, how do you and you now live in? I agree with John Lee, by the way, about you being called a tech company.
Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense to me. I think the S&P probably calls you an industrial or a manufacturer.
Maybe.
That's
the stock price rivals big e-com and software companies. So it's funny. The company I was at before this went through a massive boon in the last 2 years since I left. Weird. But then saw their stock plummet 50%.
Yeah.
And MKS's has gone 2.5x since I joined.
Incredible.
So, and that's impressive as a manufacturing company. But that's the thing.
Super.
John Lee's right. It's not really a pure manufacturing play, right? Just because of what it feeds. So it's the same as saying is NVIDIA manufacturing?
There's so few true OEM.
I mean, honestly, I look at it as
everything is connected at this point.
Automotive, maybe and even then,
but even
Rivian is fascinating to me because Rivian's probably going to sell more software than they will actual EVs.
I think Tesla's your
And
example.
Tesla's a good example.
Tesla's a vertically integrated.
And then they're gonna develop robotics. Like I think they might not even be in the car industry in 5 years.
Exactly.
They may exit that completely and focus squarely on AI and robotics.
Yes. I've heard a lot of things that all of Elon's companies really are in cahoots with each other.
Oh, probably.
Like they all have a master plan.
Yeah.
But we'll keep the conspiracy theories at bay.
It's a different
But I
podcast.
am interested, back to your Silicon Valley roots, is like, how do you see, and I'm not as interested in like your day-to-day life, and I don't mean that negatively, just because I don't think yours and mine are
pretty boring.
tremendously different in terms of how AI will impact our
Mm-hmm.
lives. But like, how do you see AI impacting your assemblers, technicians, inspectors? Like, do you see that from a labor standpoint?
I think from a labor standpoint, a lot of that will hinge on how effective robotics become over time, right? So that's it's true of automotive is a great example, right? Because automotive changed how quickly you could actually assemble a car, and it actually made it a lot safer because you don't have people losing arms and legs every day, which they used to have in the 50s and 60s. It will affect us as we integrate more robotics and AI technology into what we're doing. I mean, one of the interns gave a presentation 2 weeks ago about how he ran a data set through an AI bot, and it spit out an answer that no one had thought of. And I was like, oh, all right, well, a great application of when to use AI. He's like, yeah, we've always done this in Excel, and I just asked him, like, hey, can you take these 100 disparate data sets, put them in one bucket of data, and then find me the anomalies? And he did it. And I was like, oh, wow. And, like, some of our leaders were like, oh, geez, never thought of doing that with those reports. But I do think that AI is here to stay.
Oh, for sure.
Short of pure labor plays, like AI is not going to fix your roof, right? So roofer jobs are not going away. Plumbers, electricians, none of that's going away.
Yes.
I do think that anything that involves some level of true technology is going to evolve, and it's going to become a difference between people who know how to use AI tools and people who don't. Just like everything else, right? Like there was people who could use the internet and people who couldn't use the internet. Right?
So true.
And I think it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be who are people who are just AI enabled. Like they've smartened themselves. And you and I talked about this at lunch. Like you're like, oh, what AI is your favorite? And I was like, well, for what? For what am I trying to do? Right? Like it's like I use ChatGPT for stuff. I use Gemini for stuff. I use Claude for stuff. I use Copilot for stuff. Sometimes it's mandated by my company which ones I can use. We're Microsoft's customers, so we use Copilot, right? But in my personal life, I don't use Copilot. I use Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT to figure out stuff that I'm interested in. So it's like, again, not an easy answer.
No,
coming out of tech, it's very different because whoever would have thought that you wouldn't want to teach people to code anymore?
Right.
Because like software engineers are going to become one of the groups that can't get jobs. Like that was unheard of.
Right.
Now you've got to have an AI engineering degree so you can learn how to refine what goes into the smartness of the bot or the agent. That's fascinating. But I do think it's going to come down to people who know how to use AI and embrace it versus people who don't.
And the reason I like asking people like you this question is I had this guy, we've got a varied customer base, right? So we've got some customers that don't have more than 500 employees ever. And I know they're going to be laggards to the AI game. Yep. It's just how the world works. But like having you on, I had someone on a couple weeks ago, Don Adams, spent his last 25 years of his career or so at Bose. And I asked him the same question. He's like, I can't tell you I see it on the floor yet. I can see it, to your point, of AI-enabled people in engineering and in quality, operational data, but it hasn't
right now
hit
you
the
have to
floor
look at it
as
as a tool rather than a replacement for. There's certainly things that AI will replace. I don't think it's as doom and gloom as Wall Street likes to make it sound.
That's kind of how I
cut 30,000 jobs because they can do it all with AI.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think their
There's
budget was
pieces
fat.
of it. Well, and some of these companies have learned. Oh wow, we really missed the boat on this guess, right? Like Amazon had a lot of heartburn over how many people it let go because it figured out that they couldn't use simply AI to replace some of those things. Meta had the same heartburn on that, which is ironic because they're the people. Like I own a pair of Meta smart glasses.
Yeah,
they're a lot of fun. to just like tool around. If you like to mountain bike,
Yes.
you're like, hey, I want tunes, and hey, take a video while I'm going, and like upload it to the cloud, and post it on Instagram. Like you can do all those things from your glasses. Like that's fascinating to me, but it's much more than a consumer kind of novelty.
Yes.
Right. Like understanding that an AI tool can refine your approach to generate 0.3% more margin on a supply chain that you need to juice.
Right.
That's really fascinating applications. It's just like I think everyone fears the T2 scenario
Yeah,
where it
I agree.
becomes aware and it starts to angle against humanity. And that's happened too.
It will, I think it will. And I think what's interesting about probably where we live, in particular, is one thing I picked up pretty quickly in my first like 5 or 6 years at Davis is like, this is a weird ecosystem, Massachusetts. You have MIT and Harvard, and they come up with ideas, and a lot of it's robotics and AI, and it goes to 128
Yep.
as it starts to hit critical mass, and they're like, holy shit, we're making money. Now we need to go to 495.
Yep.
Like companies follow a little bit of a thing, and it's always been, not always, a lot of it, other than biotech in general, a lot of it is AI automation. It's automation and robotics is really the right thing to say.
Well, it's a lot of what the machines are now figuring out for us. Like for me, the most interesting applications are the medical applications because
Yes.
if you can find a cure for cancer because you can run a zillion different data points through something and it'll give you an answer in 25 seconds, like,
Yes.
oh my God, it'll probably help you identify an enzyme or a gene that is the cause of X, Y, or Z types of cancer. Like that could be profound. That could
Yes.
be profoundly impactful over the next 15 years, and I think we are very close to that. mRNA vaccines from the pandemic is kind of your first example. The fact that got figured out. Now, I'm not contributing AI to that. My guess is there were some tools that they used to model vast sets of data that could
Yes.
prove that would work. But it's the tip of the iceberg.
Innovation should happen quicker.
The innovation could be revolutionary relative. I mean, we might see people who can live to 150 years old in the next 20 years.
But I'm just surprised that as I walked through products of 10 and 15 years ago of autonomous robots in warehouse and distribution, that we haven't seen it holistically take over. I thought it would be faster.
It's
honestly.
not Jetsonian, right? We
Yeah.
were told when we were kids
Yeah.
there would be
Yes.
flying cars.
Exactly.
Like, that still hasn't and I'm still waiting.
I know.
I really want that flying car for the commute, but at the same time, it's just like innovation will come much more rapidly over the next 10 years than they probably have over the last 30.
Yes.
And
That's
just
probably a
due to
safe
that
bet.
compression module of like, tech will double every
Yes.
exponentially. It'll be interesting.
It will be interesting.
And I can't
But
wait
as
to
a
see where it
car
goes.
guy, aren't you like hoping autonomous driving doesn't totally take over?
I like well, I mean that's the whole thing. So it's like if you buy a certain trim, you can get the autonomous driving. But I have to start to say, is it worth it? Like, would I really use it?
But I read that somewhere that like at some point people say in the next 5 years autonomous driving will be undoubtedly so much safer than humans driving, and therefore the insurance companies will mandate it.
One would hope. Honestly, one would hope. I'd like driving to become a novelty, but it's like.
Would you, though?
We've all been. That's because we've been conditioned.
I love
like
cars,
kids
though.
now. Like my nephew has really no interest in driving a car. Like
Yes.
didn't get his license until he was 18. Like you and
Yeah.
I were like chomping at the
Chomping
bit
at
when
the
we were
bit.
16 to get the permit.
Right.
First day you could get the license.
Right.
You were in line to get the license.
But I think there's some of us. I'm gonna assume you're in this category. I'm gonna take a leap of faith that like you'd like to retire, and maybe it's not a Porsche, but you want to buy some kind of car
That
that
you can
probably has no computer in it
Yeah.
that you can drive once in a while.
Yeah.
I just don't want that to go away.
no, I don't want that to
I
go
don't
away
want that to
either.
go
But
away.
like I'm also a big tech geek.
Yes.
I mean it's.
I'd love to get in the car and just work or be on.
I
the
mean,
phone.
I bought a MetaQuest 3 with some extra gift card money I had over Christmas. And the fact that you can buy, and I was a big baseball player growing up, so you could buy software that will mimic taking actual batting practice, and you can compute it to be like, I want to
That's
face
wild.
Tim Lincecum, or I want to face vintage
That's
Dwight
wild.
Gooden and learn how to hit. And it's like, it's real.
Yes.
So you're actually taking batting practice.
Yes.
And you're learning how to hit. It's like that was, you went until your dad's arm got tired.
Right.
Right. And like how hard your dad could or your mom could throw.
Right.
And for how long. It's just like that
Yes.
was about what you got. You got like maybe 20 swings when
Yeah.
you're on a team. It's like imagine being able to go out and I'm just going to be able to swing for 2 hours and I'm going to refine my swing, and that's all happening because of AI.
And get feedback.
Oh my God! To get feedback on you've got
I know
X,
they've got the
loop in your
hockey stick handling drills now and
oh,
stuff.
I've got a bat that
Yeah.
has that. I've got the mini bat that will tell you what your swing, your launch angle is, and it's just like, wow,
That's
like
wild.
if I had this as a kid, like I never would have needed to leave my house, and I
Right.
could have taken batting practice all day.
Right.
Like how much better would I?
That's
have been?
cool.
Like
That is
that's
very
pretty
cool.
neat.
It is very cool. All right, one last question. That's a zinger from back in the day. When you were appraising cars, which car did you love until you went and saw it up close and personal and you wrote it off? And which car did you hate until you saw it up close and personal and now you're like, wow, that's a sick car?
All right, I was, and this will sound weird.
No,
but
it's fine.
I saw a Ferrari littered with bullet holes.
Okay.
Right, so that very much changed my view of. And
Ferrari.
what was funny was the only thing that saved that driver was he was riding in kind of a low ride position where he was tipped back. And they're like,
Lean
if
back.
he had been sitting upwards like you're
Yeah.
supposed to drive, they're like he would have been shot right in the heart.
Wow.
Instead, he got shot in like the lower ribs because of how he had positioned.
And survived.
It. And it's just like I had to see like there was a lot of blood in the car.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
it kind of turned me off.
Interesting.
The things that I would have never thought I would have found cool was I got to get in a Hummer
Yeah.
when they first got kind of commercialized.
Okay.
And it was mammoth, and I was like, oh my god, people drive these in like suburbs, and it was huge because if you've never sat in a Hummer, there's two seats in the front, but there's enough space in the middle that you can't even reach over and touch the person who's in the passenger seat. Like that's how big some of those military grade. Yeah, they're enormous.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my god, imagine this packed with soldiers. Because you always think about like, I don't know, I always did. It felt like soldiers packed into an SUV.
Yeah.
Like they're going to a soccer game. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, they got a lot of room.
They're in the
to like
minivan?
be able to like
Yeah.
get their gear
Gear.
and hold on to their gear, and like that was
That's cool.
That was the fun thing.
That's
I think
cool.
Seeing
That's
a
really-
Humvee up close.
That's really cool. What is Todd Kaylor's? I said it was the last question, but I guess I have one more. What is Todd Kaylor's dream car?
Oh man,
Because you're a car guy, and I don't get to talk to a lot of car guys.
It's probably a '67 Camaro.
Okay, cool. American
Like
muscle.
the real old. You know, the rear wheels are slightly bigger than the front wheels. People didn't care about gas mileage. You had the souped up, V8s that were manual.
Yeah.
Those are kind of neat.
Now,
Like,
if you got a car like that, would you get like the power steering put into the car and
yes,
shit? Or, yeah.
Look, there's some
Me
modern
too.
amenities
Me
that
too.
just
Yeah.
make driving
Brakes.
more comfortable. Yeah,
Brakes.
brakes and power steering. It's like if you've never see, most people don't know what power steering actually does.
Oh, my God.
Until your power steering goes out, and then you realize, oh my god, it's so impossible to drive this car without
Yes.
power steering.
Yes.
And I remember my father being like, "That's how I grew up."
That's why your arms are so
like,
big.
turning
Dax.
the wheel was
Yes.
like a chore.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your background and your story, but also waxing poetic a little bit.
Well,
with me on-
happy to be back. Next
Yeah.
time, hopefully we can do another Toddcast, patent
Yes.
pending.
Yes.
And happy to
100%.
happy to pontificate more.
Thanks again, man.
Thank you, sir.